Welcome to No Border, No Country. In December of last year, the Bexar County Commissioners in Texas voted to continue funding legal services for illegal aliens. There was only one county commissioner who voted against this measure, and that was Commissioner Grant Moody, and he joins us right now. Hi, Grant. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So tell us your understanding of this move and why did you vote against it?
It's been an ongoing issue that we've had to face here in Bexar County. It's gone on for a year and a half, 2 years now. This has come back before the court multiple times. I voted against it 3 times at this point. It's also split between both managed assigned counsel, which we have here in Bexar County, and also public defender's office. So there's kind of two different contracts going on. But ultimately, all of these programs are providing taxpayer dollars to provide, legal services, deportation defense for illegal immigrants, most likely criminal illegal immigrants that are in our criminal justice system. And I saw it as an egregious misuse of taxpayer dollars. I also took great issue with the fact that there are no constraints, no limitations, no guardrails in terms of who can participate in the program. You can imagine repeat violent offenders in our jail that are now using taxpayer dollars to defend themselves from being deported. I mean, that's just crazy. And that's not just me saying that. I mean, we pulled that out in court. It was clear that managed assigned counsel and the American Gateways organization agreed that that was in fact the case. There were no limitations on who could participate in the program. And I'm continuing to fight this and trying to bring visibility to it because taxpayer dollars should not be spent in this way.
So what was the impetus behind this whole movement? Because, and I want to make this clear for our viewers, what you're talking about is people who are either in the United States unlawfully that have wound up in the criminal justice system, or people who entered the U.S. lawfully but are about to lose their immigration status because they've committed some kind of a crime. So why should U.S. citizens be worried about providing these people with free legal counsel?
Well, I would argue they shouldn't be.
Well, I agree with you, but just so our viewers understand, what was it that prompted the voters in Bexar County to come up with this crazy scheme?
Yeah, so this I think was brought by, it was obviously brought to court by colleagues on the court who view this issue very differently than I do or we do, right? But the broader issue I think goes back to within criminal defense law versus civil defense, right? I think everyone has to understand, and this became an issue, right? And we can talk about this too. I actually put forward a bill in the state legislature to clear this up and ensure we ban this going forward in Texas. But some of the confusion stems around criminal defense versus civil defense and deportation, immigration services being in that civil category. So everyone within our criminal justice system, per the Constitution, has a right to criminal defense. That's not challenged here. We all agree with that. However, when you're talking about these immigration services, you are talking about civil defense, and this is purely a political decision that is being made in certain jurisdictions, mainly big, liberal counties and such cities where you are using taxpayer dollars in order to provide those deportation defense services. And I don't know all the genesis for where that started. But clearly it's proliferated. It's actually happening down in Harris County. Now, Harris County has recently been sued by our Attorney General Ken Paxton. And we're going to see how that case plays out. But that was part of my argument too here, right? So you can argue on the merits that this is just bad policy. You can also argue on the fact that, clearly this is going to end up in a lawsuit for Bexar County that we're ultimately going to lose, and we're just going to waste taxpayer dollars again trying to defend bad policy in the courts. So a lot of different angles to this piece.
Now, doesn't this create a contradiction, because federal law says we're supposed to defend our border, prevent illegal passage across that border, but yet in jurisdictions like this, we're also saying, but if you do get caught or you're in trouble, we'll provide you with legal services. Isn't that an incentive, whereas we're supposed to be deterring illegal immigration?
Yeah, without a doubt. So if you don't have any right to be here,
right,
why would you have a right to an attorney? And there is, in fact, a federal regulation that says that in immigration proceedings, you have a right to have counsel as a matter of due process, but any counsel you have has to not be at taxpayer expense. Now, I think a lot of states have taken that to mean that it's not at federal taxpayer expense. But one of the issues with this is most states receive massive amounts of funds from the federal government. So usually the money is available to do this at the state level because the federal government is covering the cost of something else.
Grant, you mentioned earlier American Gateways. Now, it was reported that this is a nonprofit that's doing the legal assistance here, and part of this vote allocated over $560,000 to them. In our experience, some of these nonprofits in the illegal immigration side are kind of shadowy, to say the least. What do you know about this group?
Well, I don't know a lot. I know they had a couple of representatives come to court, and they obviously, were framing this more in terms of, we're trying to, protect families and young children. However, again, when I, under cross-examination, asked the clear questions about, well, are there limitations on who can participate in this program? And they couldn't refute that. There were no limitations. And one of the things we've asked them for is specific information on all their clients, everyone that they have used taxpayer funds to provide these services to, because we ultimately want to understand, right, who exactly we're servicing. We know that they've admitted, in court, that there are no limitations on who they can provide, statutorily or through the contract. I was clearly advocating that we fix this contract at a bare minimum, but that was not done. I want to at least know actually who they're providing those taxpayer-funded legal services to. But to your point earlier about, just the conflict between federal and local office here, Office of Homeland Security, ICE are trying to enforce the law, and yet we have a situation where we are literally spending taxpayer dollars to try to defend against the enforcement of that law. So clearly there's some conflicts going on there between the supreme law of the land and federal laws and these local jurisdictions.
So you bring up an interesting point. There's the conflict between the local and the federal jurisdictions, but there's also just the question of whether this is money well spent or not. And the fact is, in immigration court, roughly 75 to 80% of people who go before the immigration court wind up with an order of removal. So the people who are advocating this, what is the claim that they're making, that generally speaking, aliens who have counsel have a better outcome before the immigration court? Because that doesn't seem to be borne out by statistics.
Yeah, and that case wasn't really made within court. Sometimes the cases are pretty weak or poorly made, but I can't really speak to that because that argument wasn't even really laid out.
So as a point of clarification for our viewers, for criminal court, based on Gideon versus Wainwright Supreme Court case, Because of the liberty interest that is at stake, meaning that if you are convicted of a crime, you could potentially, if it's a capital crime, be executed. And if not, you could be looking at prison time of a significant period if it's a felony case. The Supreme Court in Gideon versus Wainwright found that if you are indigent, you are entitled to an attorney in a federal case at government expense to make sure that your fundamental rights are preserved. That doesn't apply in misdemeanor cases at the federal level. It doesn't apply to civil cases at all in the federal courts. And then there are states that have legislation that apply this to anyone at the felony or the misdemeanor level. But I think one of the things that's a big myth that people don't understand is not just anyone who shows up in court gets a free attorney because they don't feel like getting their own. It's only if you're indigent. And so if you don't have the funds for an attorney, you usually can get one. In most jurisdictions, if you're not willing to get an attorney, but you can afford one, you can actually be forced to go forward pro se, even in a criminal case. That's not the case in civil immigration court. You can be forced to go forward pro se no matter what. So whether you have an attorney or not is immaterial in a civil proceeding. And I think a lot of people don't understand this. And I think one of the things that is problematic is the people who are advocating this are trying to analogize immigration proceedings to criminal proceedings when they're really two different things.
Yeah, 100%. And you put a lot more detail and nuance into how I was trying to, clarify that between criminal law and civil law being these immigration proceedings, right? But and we saw that in the Texas legislature, to be honest. There was a lot of confusion about, banning the use of taxpayer dollars for immigration defense services. And immediately people were tying that back to, indigent defense for criminal law. And that created some confusion, right? So, I mean, it's going to be incumbent upon us and others to make sure that we clearly articulate that and remove that cloud of uncertainty as we kind of go forward and try to attack this. But there's a lot of misunderstanding, I think, out there when it comes to this.
Grant, the Attorney General in your state, Ken Paxton, has a case against another county with a similar policy. Is there any talk of the AG getting involved there? And if so, would you welcome that?
There is a current lawsuit against Harris County, Houston, Texas. And, I assume it's only a matter of time until the dots are all connected, with Bexar County doing the exact same thing. I don't, presume to know whether they would want to run the Harris County case to conclusion before they looked at other jurisdictions, but clearly it poses a legal risk to Bexar County, knowing what we're getting into with that ongoing case. But sure, I mean, I think it's bad policy, and I think it needs to be shut down, whether that is a vote of commissioners court, which I've lost 3 times, or whether that's through, legal action, or whether that's through amending state law. But one way or another, it's bad policy that is bad for taxpayers and bad for our state, bad for our county. And I hope it gets shut down.
And so just to put a point on this so that nobody misses what's going on here, this is taxpayers in Texas paying for attorneys to defend people who have no right to be in the United States and who have most likely been convicted of a crime.
That's correct.
Which is just crazy when you stop and think about it.
Surely there's some program in your county that could use that $560,000. Am I wrong?
Yeah, and that was only a portion of this, right? Over the last 2 years, it's been more like $2 million between the Managed Assign Council and the Public Defender's Office. And we've heard pushback from the public defenders who say that they are only providing constitutionally required services, but not so with Managed Assigned Counsel. I think they've been very clear and truthful and transparent that they are providing these immigration defense services. But yeah, there's a multitude of needs in our community, and we're always trying to lower the burden on taxpayers. At least my office is, and to think that we're throwing millions of dollars in this type of crazy process, I mean, is it's hard to wrap your head around. But I'm glad you again clarified for your viewers exactly what's going on here.
Well, crazy is a great word because if you stop and think about this, it sends a terrible message. Essentially, it tells people who are in other countries who are thinking about becoming illegal aliens in Bexar County, Texas, that if you show up illegally and you happen to get caught, or if you show up illegally and commit a crime and happen to get caught, don't worry about it because somebody's going to foot the bill for your attorney. And there's a possibility that you may come out of this with the ability to remain in the U.S., even though you've been convicted of a crime and you're here unlawfully. And clearly that's not doing the county any good because it's going to make it a destination for illegal aliens.
Yeah. And clearly, the last 9 months have seen a dramatic reduction in illegal immigration and border crossings. But the burden over the previous 4 years in terms of counties in Texas and really all over the country, but especially here, I mean, has just been very costly. And it's really hard to put any kind of number on it. But when you think about our education, our system, our schools, our hospital district that provides indigent care, our jail, which at any given time had 200 to 400 illegal immigrants in there. I mean, I do have a number on that one because right now we have, 200 to 300 inmates housed at other counties. That's costing us about $7 million a year. So in previous years, just housing of the illegal immigrants in our Bexar County jail was probably in the $10 million per year range. That will never be reimbursed for Bexar County taxpayers. But yeah, it's a real burden financially that folks have to think about, right? When we're providing all these services, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, or criminal justice.
So if I'm reading all of that correctly, and I'm not the greatest at math, but it seems that if the county sheriff were willing to cooperate with ICE and you weren't providing free attorneys, that the taxpayers in your county could save something along the lines of $2 to $7 million every year simply by ensuring that the immigration law was enforced and that local law enforcement cooperated with ICE.
Yeah, and so my understanding, and I could be wrong, is that the Bexar County Sheriff's Office has agreed to comply with the 287 program. I know some of the surrounding counties were the first ones to sign up for that. I know our constable in my precinct has committed to that support as well, and I have called on all of the rest of local law enforcement to support that as well. We issued a statement the other day for a news story on it, but to me, it's common sense, right? That this is just about supporting federal law enforcement in their responsibilities, the enforcement of the law, right? Period. Full stop. We should always do that. There should never be any conflict between local law enforcement, state law enforcement, and federal law enforcement. We have laws, and when other law enforcement is trying to enforce those laws, we should always be willing to partner and support those efforts.
Amen. Full stop.
Amen.
Grant Moody, thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you for standing up for common sense and law and order down there. It sounds like there's a lot of people that don't share that, but you are to be commended for standing up for that. So thanks again.
Well, thank you,
Pleasure
gentlemen.
to have you on.
Enjoyed it, and we'll keep fighting this. We're not done yet.
All right, well, come back again. Let us know what's going on down there.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Matt, that was an interesting report from him down there. A lot of people get the impression that Texas is this rock solid red state and they stand up for their law and order there, but not everyone is on the program when it comes to that, especially in Bexar County.
No, Bexar County at one point had a sheriff who was 100% pro-immigration violator and didn't want to cooperate with the federal government at all. So it's interesting to see that things are moving in the 287G direction there. But this is craziness, spending money on attorneys for immigration violators. U.S. citizens who are going into civil court, if you run a restaurant and you have an administrative regulation violation for, I don't know, a sanitation violation or a health code violation, you don't get a free attorney. As a business owner, you're going to get your own attorney and go and take care of things.
So it's not illegal for them to do this, but they're not supposed to do it? Is that where it's at?
Well, so you can't use federal dollars to pay for attorneys for aliens in immigration proceedings. There doesn't appear to be anything that statutorily blocks that for states. But the thing is, if an illegal alien is in your state and is sucking up money for services, and particularly if they get entangled with the criminal justice system after having committed a crime, why would you want to penalize the American taxpayer and make them pay for that person's immigration attorney?
It's and this is far from the only place around the country that's doing this. I mean, we've seen some of these wackier jurisdictions around the country. They can't wait to shower these people with legal services and benefits of all kinds.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Probably the most significant violator was DA Larry Krasner's office in Philadelphia, and they actually took a district attorney position and converted it into this position where the person was advocating for reduced charges for criminal aliens. And that creates a huge ethical problem because you can't have people representing two sides of the same case working in the same office as a general bar requirement. And, Krasner bent over backwards. He claimed that it was only going to be minor charges, things like people who were caught with, a dime bag of marijuana or something small like that. And what we found when we did research was that they were actually reducing people's violent crime charges. They were reducing, sexual assault charges and other felony crimes in order to allow people who had an immigration status but would lose it because of the criminal conviction to remain here in the United States. And then they were deliberately reducing charges of illegal aliens to keep ICE from noticing those individuals and finding them and deporting them.
Yes.
And so this is an instance of states, whether it's here in Bexar County or whether it was what was going on with the Krasner administration in Philadelphia, it's an instance of state and local jurisdictions deliberately engaging in behavior that undermines the integrity and the enforcement of federal immigration law.
And we investigated this when we were at the Immigration Reform Law Institute. And I remember one of the details we brought up there was that for all the rhetoric by the anti-borders crowd that aliens are so persecuted and downtrodden in this country, the result of Krasner's policy was that criminal aliens, were getting rights that American citizens were not getting. If you're an average American citizen, you got arrested on the same charge. There's no special office in the DA's office trying to get your charges downgraded and lowered and reduced.
No, it's blatantly discriminatory. So not only were the aliens getting rights that Americans weren't getting, they were getting deals that wouldn't be offered to Americans on the basis of their citizenship status, which is blatant discrimination under federal law, and it's prohibited. And here you have a district attorney who is knowingly engaging in illegal discrimination as a part of his platform that he ran on when he was elected to that office. It's crazy when you stop and think about this. And as an attorney and a former judge, it bothers me because the willingness of attorneys to follow the rule of law and uphold the moral and ethical obligations that come along with being an officer of the court are what makes the legal system work. And if everyone just ignores those because they're inconvenient from a political perspective, then the whole system falls apart.